Welcome back to the Frith Guild podcast. I'm your host, Eric.
And I'm co-host Scott.
And today we're taking a quick break from Academy Arcanist and kind of get into the last few fables that we haven't really gotten a chance to discuss or go over yet. Just a couple of those, and I know there's a couple of blooper scenes that I remember that I wanted to talk about as well with the earlier books. So with that, we'll get into the Fable of the Garden of Poison. And this is a very small chapter. It's just a few pages, but it gives you that little tiny bit of backstory on Rhys, or some call it the meat bag.
Meat bag's the Rizzle.
Oh yes, sorry.
Unfortunately, no meat bag with us right now.
So Rhys is basically from poverty. He did grow up in the Kieran village. He ended up being hit with a plague, and this is actually not the arcane plague he was hit with. He actually was healed by Helvati himself and is no longer able to stay still because of the severity of the plague that he had gotten. Basically, there's no way he recovered from it. We also see that this is kind of where the plague got started from, or how it got started from, is from the Kieran village. The Kieran that got affected by this plague actually was kind of like the start or preemptive into the arcane plague. So they're using the diseased bodies of these Kierans to basically get the idea of it. We do see Rhys entering a very fun garden, which is basically don't touch anything because it'll probably kill you if you do. Except for like a unicorn arcanist or something crazy. Rhys goes all the way to the back of this garden of poison, and he finds Yevon Van Rover, who is the abyssal leech arcanist, and finds out that he has a sample that shows the altered form of the arcane plague, and he does this by using an arm of the Soul Forge to make other god creatures susceptible to the plague. And this is kind of where this fable stops. Again, it's not a very long one, but it's just a tiny little bit of backstory on Rhys and kind of how the arcane plague started and how they altered it.
Very cool. It's like you said, it's just backstory. It's fun because you get his true story, you learn about his stolen magic, but also the craziness of the work environment of how they're constructing the plague.
I mean, they decided to do it at a very good place at the very least. You're going to have too many people wandering in there.
No, it's surrounded by nullstone, so you can't teleport in. That's why Rhys has to walk in himself. So it's very well guarded. Very cool little interaction between them. Shows kind of the pressure that Yevon is under. Despite being kind of Thiesen's protege, he's still subject to the Autar. With that, we'll move into the Fable of the Soulforged Arcanist. So this is told from the perspective of Dread Pirate Calisto. It's slightly longer than the Poison Garden, but we do start with Calisto. He is making his way through a forest. Second Ascension is hacking their way through the forest. Calisto is not hacking his way because, as he puts it, he was hired to protect Thiesen while he bonded to a god creature. He was not hired to clear a forest.
Hey, the man knows what he's paid for.
He knows. And you gotta avoid that manual labor when you can, so... We do also get this insight about how much even he hates Thiesen. He thinks Thiesen's stuck up, feels he's the only one good enough for the Soulforge, and Calisto doesn't really put anyone on that high of a pedestal. One of the non-Arcanists does comment that Calisto should probably be helping, which is a very bold move, considering that you realize Calisto is hired as muscle and kills very easily.
And I don't think he would really care, about killing one of these non-Arcanists.
No, there's no reason. He's a Dread Pirate. He has no thought for your life. But yeah, bold move. Go for it. We do also find out that this is Marcus, who we had met in the other stories. So this seems to be the meeting between Callisto and Marcus. As they make their way through the forest, the trees start to die, and they do come upon this temple in the forest. Hellion tries to get them into the temple by essentially yanking the door off, but he can't, and then Thiessen realizes, oh, this is where we need the runestone. He also gives some backdrop into the Soul Forge and why it's called that, which I do think is pretty interesting because, like Callisto, when they said Soul Forge, I pictured like an actual hammer and anvil, like making a soul somehow. But it actually comes from some of the earliest forms of life who were slugs, which explains why the Soul Forge itself is forging life and is a slug.
The more you know.
The more you know. As they go in, the walls are absolutely covered with pictures of creatures, and they're not always great ones. Some of them are pretty gory, some of them are just kind of gross creatures that don't really fit. There is this really funny comment from Hellion about how he really hopes that there are babies there because he's hungry and babies are delicious.
It's like veal.
It really is. He just talks about how like tender it is and just it's so great. And you can tell Callisto, who obviously had to deal with feeding Hellion a child at some point, so he's been through it, but still is not a huge fan of feeding babies to Hellion. As they get in, Thiessen does comment that they needed to bring living beings with them, which is one of the reasons all the non-Arcanists are there. So they go into this room, the creatures in the room touch them, and the human beings just start to kind of rot away. Marcus does call for help, and Callisto sends Hellion to save him, so apparently his brave comment paid off, because Callisto did take some notice of him. Marcus does let on that he was promised to become an Arcanist, so, and even promised to be like a dragon Arcanist, so a little bit of kind of concern of how that's going to happen. We saw in the books that these creatures will just bond after they're brought back to life, and that's obviously the plan for Marcus, but a concern because he had failed several trial of worse before.
He's just desperate to get anything he can, so...
Yeah, I'd take it. I mean, I'd be happy with a lot less than a dragon. So
Heck yeah.
I feel like if somebody offered me to bond with a dragon, I'd probably be willing to do quite a bit for it. They do approach a pedestal, and Thiessen ends up cutting his hand and offering his blood, but this isn't the right offering, and there's the slime relic keeper that comes up. And unfortunately, Relic Keepers are pretty much the worst thing that a Manicore Arcanist can fight, because they can't be paralyzed, they can't be hurt in their venom, and any physical attack is going to result in you being cut up. So 3 of the kind of most powerful things that a Manicore Arcanist brings aren't really effective. But nonetheless, you know, Thiessen tells him, hey, you got to rip its heart out. That's how, the only way that it's going to die, so Hellion does put it into this kind of stasis form, and Callisto is forced to kind of on his own run up and kill this Relic Keeper slime thing. The creatures in this are just so weird. Like, everything is just described as being gross and slimy and not fun. Callisto does make a joke that all the walls are lined with arms, so maybe that's what they're looking for. And Thiessen actually agrees with him, so just is like, hey, cut my arm off. Callisto's like, yeah, I've looked forward to this one. So, cuts his arm off. That is the correct offering, and the Soul Forge does offer to bond with Thiessen, but does say that he does have to kill the Trash Dragon, unfortunately. We do learn...
I don't think Thiessen's too horribly upset about it.
No, Thiessen's not, but I love me a Trash Dragon, so I was kind of sad with the Trash Dragon.
Especially because of like the crap that you have to go through to bond with said Trash Dragon. Like, it reminds me of the scene in Saw 2
Oh,
when they're in the house.
sticks his hands in the glass and
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of what I think of when I think of the Trash Dragon Trial Worth.
I definitely get that vibe as well. Yeah, let's crawl through a bunch of broken glass until we find some precious object.
Right.
We do find out that the Soulforge's name, and I'm gonna butcher this. I'm assuming Zarki. Yeah, that's for sure wrong. So, but that's what we're going with for now. It does try to kill Hellion and Marcus, who's with Hellion at this point, but Thiessen does stop them. After that, we do get to kind of the typical rose-colored beam that appears. They go into the sun, they bond. Thiessen does admit that he created the arcane plague. And at this point, Callisto determines, yeah, this dude's worse than Redbeard. Decides it's not worth sticking around, does not even get his payment, just takes Marcus and books it.
And that's saying something from Callisto.
Yeah, this dude's been around for centuries, has seen the worst of the worst, took one look at this situation and was like, yeah, not worth the money. And said, I'm going to take my losses and just run.
Like I said, that's pretty dramatic to him. So,
yeah, you know it's a bad situation. But that ends the Fable of the Soulforge. So we do get to see one more kind of interesting trial of worth and one more god creature bonding ceremony, which is pretty interesting just because you get it from the perspective of Thiessen and how he approaches it, which is very different from like the hack and slash that we sometimes see with folk.
And so with that, I'm going to kind of go over a couple of the blooper chapters that we see with the first few books, at least the first three. The first book, Nightmare Arcanist, we go back to the scene where Volk is in the Endless Mire, and he's talking with the White Heart. And rather than him getting kind of creeped out and the White Heart trying to do that like sickening, like trying to convince Volk's just like, you know what, screw it, why not? Like, okay, like here, let's bond. Volk is now the White Heart Arcanist.
The plague, White Heart.
It's just very, very nonchalant of the way it went out instead of in the book.
It is, and same thing as earlier. Like, if I was eager to bond with something, it crossed my mind. Like, you know,
the creepy fisheye thing maybe pump the brakes a little bit on, but you know, I'd be happy just to have a thing, mystical creature be bonded with.
it is, especially, yeah. Jealous.
So in Dread Pirate Arcanist, book 2, we're at the very end of the book where there's the major fight scene going on the ship of Third Abyss, and Callisto drops the F-bomb. And I feel like this is one of those moments where everybody was dead silent when he said it, and just everybody heard it, and everybody just kind of stops what they're doing. Like, yo, like, I get you're a Dread Pirate and all, but that's kind of a little bit out of hand here. Where this is a young adult book right now, we shouldn't be dropping the F word. And Ilya is making Callisto apologize for using the F word. Or I think it's Zelfrey. Somebody was making him apologize for using the F word while they're fighting.
It very much feels like how like the PG-13 or where you get one F-bomb per movie, and they're like, when would it drop? And that's very much what it feels like. Is like, whoa, this is PG-13. Like, you only get one of those.
Just like in Lord of the Rings, where would you put the F word if you were to put it somewhere? Just one word, one F word.
It can change a lot of scenes.
It really can. And then finally with Coliseum Arcanist. We are in the midst of our battle with the Denglong and the Bogrest, the two Doggo Arcanists. I believe those are the two. And just as Scott and I had done with that episode in particular, talking about how certain moves are super effective and critical hits, and gotta catch them all, and because the Bogress has two heads, it's double trouble. And I have to admit, I messaged Shammy as soon as I got done reading that one, and I was like, were you surprised that we did that just out of our own volition? So she's like, that was the intention, the thought behind it. So
there's a whole generation of people, probably the same people who are interested in this series, that all, I'm sure, made that same connection.
Like, that they're going through reading it and like, oh, that was a super effective move. Like, they hadn't been going through that in their mind.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, with that's the first three. I think there's one or two more, but we may pop them in here or there, or whenever we get to the end of the first Academy Arcanist book and talk about that blooper scene.
There's some good ones. The blooper scenes start to really escalate, and I really appreciate it.
Yes, and my wife was so mad at me the one night because I was finishing one of the books, and I just started dying laughing in bed, and it's like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, because who doesn't want to finish the book at the end of the night? And I was reading it, I just start dying laughing, and she just looks over at me like, what is so funny? I'm like, sorry, I'll tell you in the morning when you're not mad at me. And then, did you want to do that last one with the...
I wasn't planning on covering it, so if we wanted to save it for after, because that'd be just a nice finish them there, go through the bloopers, probably gets us one more of these.
Perfect. Gosh, now I gotta figure out what to do for the next end of this book or end of the next book.
Yeah, once we get to the other ones, it's like back to finding ones. But yeah, give us one more episode between that trial and those bloopers.
And with that ends today's episode. Catch us next week as we go over the next 5 chapters of Academy Arcanist, as we are getting more into our classes. You get to see things going on. So exciting. Scott, did you have anything else you'd like to add today?
No, excited to jump back into it.
All right, we'll catch you guys next week.